How's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming in for the latest live stream here on WardyNYM. This is our first unofficial yet official at the same time off-season live stream here on the channel. We have a plethora of topics to get into. I was hesitant. I was like, you know what? Should I just wait until the off-season officially begins next week? We know there's going to be a new World Series champion by the time the weekend is over, but there's just so many topics that I feel have good reasoning that we should be deep diving now as Mets fans. So that is what we're going to be doing in today's show. I'll be getting to some of your questions as well. Plenty to get into. So again, thank you guys all so much for being in here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. As always, helping us get to 20K subs for our next short-term goal, and also help us get that being into 100 likes for our first short-term goal here in the live show. There might be people that watch us on replay, a good amount as well. Appreciate everyone in here. I have no clue how viewership is going to go tonight. Again, World Series is on in an hour at the time of recording this, but I'm like, I got to get this out. I want to talk New York Mets baseball with you guys and break down all the latest news because as you see here on the graphic, there are many things to discuss regarding this team. Rumor-based, what's going on news front, not too much just yet. Plenty to get into some things that aren't even on the graphic as well. But more than anything, I'm going to do a quick roll call. Appreciate every single one of you guys being in here. I see Matthew, how's it going? Elf, GM, Brad, Gamer, Mets9, Eric, Dirty. Let's see, Robert. Appreciate everyone here in the live chat. Thank you guys so much again. And also, guys, of course, make sure to continue smashing those buttons. I would like to let you all know that today's show, like every show you'll be seeing for a while on the channel, is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your #1 source for all your sports betting needs. So make sure you head over to betonline.ag to get your 50% off welcome bonus. Use code Bleav at BLEAV so that way you can get your rewards. BetOnline, it's where the games begin. And now, folks, let's let the show begin. Hope everyone's been doing well. It's been a while, guys. You know, again, this is the first live show I've done in quite some time. Actually, the first live show I'm pretty sure that we're doing since, the post-game show that I did last, like of just me, since everything that was going on with my health. So we'll see how this show goes, but I'm excited. And more than anything, I do want to know to everyone here that are watching the live show and the people in the comments below, let me know your thoughts down below. How do you like the graphics that are going on right now? I realized that I can make this run by showing some highlights. The only thing was I had to take out my background music. When I was playing the background music, I was just getting a little bit more lagging than what I want to see. So you guys let me know how you like the format right now because things will be ever changing. We have some awesome new graphics and designs that are going to be coming our way as soon as next week, which I'm excited about. But let me know what you think about the layout. But yes, today's discussion, before I go any forward, is, of course, on the latest news and rumors for the New York Mets. And there's a reason why we're highlighting Edwin Diaz. There's a reason why we're highlighting Alexis Diaz, his younger brother, who very well could find himself in Queens this offseason should the Mets go out and potentially pursue him again, as we saw an initial report from SNY's Andy Martino, who we all love so much. Cue the sarcasm. Did make a note, and this, I will say, is more than likely factual as much as we like to gripe about Andy, including myself, most importantly. One thing is certain is that every year, by the time you get to the offseason, there's always news that comes out from the trade deadline or close to the trade deadline during the season that wasn't linked. Obviously, the Mets were pursuing a wide variety of options to upgrade the bullpen and other things. They decided to settle on just a Darren Ruff and Michael Givens acquisition that certainly didn't help them down the stretch for the most part. However, what we do know is that Alexis Diaz was pursued by the New York Mets, again, the younger brother of the star closer for the Amazons. Hopefully they bring him back. And Edwin Diaz had a phenomenal rookie year for the Reds, but again, the asking price was too high. So we're going to be getting into what exactly would be the upside should you go out and potentially pursue Edwin's younger brother again, and in the scenario where you bring Edwin back to the Mets on a massive contract, probably the first $100 million reliever that you'll see out there. What could this potential tandem look like, this brother duo rather, in Queens together? We're going to be getting into it all. We've seen some other rumors, reports that have come out. Kevin, great member, thank you so much for being here. Alex, John, Brad, how's it going, my man? He says, who is the Mets' first choice for right field if Mets don't get Judge or Nimmo? Well, I mean, Starling Marte is Mets right fielder next year. In case you guys aren't aware, Billy Epper was just on a podcast recently with Joel Sherman and also that being in John Heyman. Again, we know who they are. And came out and said that, yes, they do feel comfortable putting Starling in center should it be needed. I think that's just more of a thing for a leverage game between talking with Nimmo and Boris and everything. I don't expect Starling Marte to be pushed out of right field, especially after him getting older and he's dealing with some injuries. Today it was announced as well. That's why it's not on the graphic, because it came out after I set this up earlier today, is that Starling Marte is going to be out for 8 weeks now this offseason, resting up as he had surgery on something going on with, I Bleav it was his he had a muscle going on. What was it exactly? It was like some stomach muscle. He had something along those lines happening. So he got surgery on that. He sustained that injury on July 9th. So that's crazy considering he was a 300 hitter for that time period going on for the remainder of the year, dealing with that ailment. So he's going to make full recovery. He'll be ready for spring. But with Starling Marte already in his mid-30s, he's not someone that I expect the Mets to casually just go out and shove in his center field after the guy played the entire 2022 campaign in right. I just think that's unrealistic. I don't expect that to happen. I'd be surprised if that happened, even in the worst scenario where the Mets do not bring back Brandon Nimmo. But I feel very strongly, and as do the Mets from current reports, that Brandon Nimmo will return to Queens, or at least that there's certainly mutual interest. As you guys have seen on the graphic, it'll be coming back and forth with the highlights here. But yes, Brandon Nimmo and Edwin Diaz, that is one of the biggest reports that have come out. They are priority number one for the Mets above all other free agents available, including Jacob deGrom, who, yes, you could argue maybe that statement wasn't mentioned of Jake because of the fact that he's not officially free agent yet. He hasn't officially opted out of his contract, even though that is certainly going to happen. But no less, Brandon Nimmo and Edwin Diaz being the top priorities for the Mets, I think that is a great thing. I think that is the right thing more than anything, because Brandon Nimmo, if you lose this guy, what are you going to do to replace him in the outfield? Okay. Aaron Judge is the pipe dream. We'll talk about him throughout the offseason. I'm sure we'll do individual videos. Maybe we'll throw him in a top 5 video or something. But further reports came out today again, and this is ever changing, but the Mets are not likely to be going after Aaron Judge. It's been said from the beginning, they're going to be big game hunting, but first and foremost, it's going to be worrying about the Yankees bringing him back. And in the scenario where, say, the Yanks are truly out of the bidding for Aaron Judge, then that's maybe where you could see the Mets come in as a dark horse out of nowhere. But Aaron Judge is the pipe dream. He is someone, however, who I do not expect to be in Queens at this juncture for the 2023 season and beyond. If there's one big name free agent out there who I think actually has some potential in landing in Queens that is a position player, or I think it's more so my natural optimism as a fan and hopes that it could happen, at least the Mets having a decent amount of interest, is Trey Turner for the LA Dodgers, because he is the best shortstop arguably in baseball out there. Yes, you'd have to pay a little bit of a premium to put him at second base, but he is someone who would do wonders for this team. Yes, I know the Mets want more of the home run ball. There's going to be more home runs hit. The Mets are shortening up right field as we speak. They're making a quote-unquote speakeasy lounge in right field, which is going to be pushing things a little bit. So, again, right field is going to be more favorable now, especially for Mets pull hitters beating the shift, because the shift is no longer existing next season. I'm expecting Francisco Lindor, among many other lefty type hitters / switch hitters, to really thrive with not the quote unquote short porch that you see from Yankee Stadium. But yes, right field is going to be shorter than what it has been in years prior at Citi Field, and it'll be beneficial not only for the Mets from an offensive standpoint, but it'll be beneficial to the fans that want to get that fun experience in the speakeasy type lounge. They're also taking away the fencing in right field, and they're putting glass of some sort, I Bleav, so that way you can be sitting in that lounge and have potential of home run balls dropping your way while you're lounging on some nice seats, sipping some drinks, really gaining the experience. I'm sure it's going to be a pretty penny be sitting in that area, but no less, it's going to be more of a fun experience. We know Steve Cohen loves the entertainment aspect of bringing that to Citi Field, and rest assured we're going to see that full-fledged, and I feel like it's still only the beginning for what's going to be happening over the next couple of years at Citi Field, between the DJs, between the upgraded visuals that they have going around. So much is happening at Citi Field, and it's going to be a blast to be there. But yes, right field is going to be interesting for the Mets next year and how they evaluate things from an offensive standpoint, not only how it benefits them on the offensive side of the ball, but how it will hurt them on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be easier for especially guys hitting oppo as a righty or pull headers that are, say, a lefty, to pull that bad boy to right than what it was in years prior. But I think that's all I need to get on that tangent. I'm going to see here. We have Conforto right here already. Yeah, Conforto is a very interesting discussion. I'm sure we'll have it again this offseason. I'm a Michael Conforto lover, and I do think that he is someone that has more potential of landing with the Mets than I think what people realize. I don't think it's necessarily likely, and I don't think it's, something where Michael Conforto is this huge question mark this offseason. What is he going to be coming back from not playing for an entire 2022 year? Big question mark, a lot of uncertainty there. But yes, he does fit the mold in the sense if you want to bring in a lefty bat that can DH/be corner outfielder, I mean, the Mets will have options there. And it would not be all that surprising if Conforto's name does linger back with the Mets once again versus what seemed like it was never going to happen after the Mets officially parted ways with him last offseason. But not going to expand too much more on the Michael Conforto front. We have all offseason to get into this. And again, I understand that this is the first show of the year, but I really just want to get out there. What is the latest things going on with the Mets and sharing my reactions and really highlighting the potential of the Mets and their bullpen for this offseason. Who can they acquire exactly? How can this be upgraded? Because you look at the bullpen and you see Edwin Diaz as a top priority for Billy Epler, who may note that, yes, the Mets are expected to be in constant contact with Edwin as soon as free agency begins the morning after of the World Series conclusion, which will, of course, be either Saturday or Sunday. So, yeah, offseason is officially beginning just in the next, 48, 72 hours at the time of recording this here, Thursday night, 7:13 p.m. Eastern time. But I'm really excited for what this offseason is going to bring for this team. They have so many options. But again, this feels like an offseason, at least in my point of view. It's not going to be nearly as much as what it was last year. The Mets, again, they went, as John Heyman famously said in the podcast with Billy Epler, 5 for 5 and acquiring big-time free agents, small and big, with of course, the biggest behemoth of them all, the guy on the wall behind me right there, and Max Scherzer. And the Mets killed it last offseason. They did as good as you can get. The only gripe you could really give them is not adding enough to the bullpen, and that would be something that would linger, especially with having a lefty specialist throughout the year, and that's something that they certainly can and hopefully will address this year. But point is that when you look at the Mets laundry list of free agents that they have, and this is something that we're going to be deep diving tenfold next week for our next episode of Bleav in Queens, myself, Joe Serralo, and Anthony Recker, former New York Met, now MLB Network analyst and host. We're going to be deep diving the Mets free agents and who stays, who goes next week. But for now, I just want to briefly touch on the fact that the Mets are in a position where the best potential outcome for them this offseason very well could be bringing back their internal guys that are now up for contract in Jacob deGrom, in Brennan Nimmo, in Edwin Diaz, in Chris Bassett, Taijuan Walker, Cookie Carrasco, etc. Who's coming back, who's staying, who's leaving. We'll get into it further next week. But this just from the forefront feels much more of an offseason for the Mets, where we're going to see the bigger moves be more internal than they will be external. I have this gut feeling that the Mets are going to run back a pretty similar team next year, with the potential of there being maybe one drastic difference from an offensive standpoint, and from a pitching standpoint, that's where things will be most different. In the bullpen, a lot of guys are expected to leave, and the Mets will be going for external options. They'll be dealing with some internal options, and then you're going to see in the rotation, how do they fill things out? That'll all be indicative on Jacob deGrom returning or not, that we discussed in our latest video on the channel, 5 Mets who will not return. Jacob deGrom is on the thumbnail. It guts me to say that and have that, and I pray that's a jinx going on that I can change that thumbnail as soon as Jake goes pen and paper and signs a new deal with the Mets. But that is a huge wild card. It's 50-50 shot right now, so we'll see what this offseason brings. But what I do want to ask everyone here in the live show before we advance forward, before we get into more of the discussion topics, especially on the rumor front, because that's going to take up the bulk of the discussion. I don't know how long we're going to go live today or anything of that nature, but I do want to ask everyone here in the live show and for people on replay, what is your personal opinion on the Mets outlook this offseason? Are you under the impression the same as me, where I honestly have the feeling that the Mets will be more focused internally to the point where, again, the Mets have an assumed payroll next year of $220 million, including bringing everyone back through arbitration, headlined by Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, etc. What those guys are estimated to be getting through arbitration. That's $220 million. That's already one of the bigger payrolls in baseball, and that's without bringing back any of your key free agents. So, again, as we discussed in our Steve Cohen video a couple weekends ago that has, almost 20,000 views now. Thank you so much for that. I deep dive how the Mets outlook right now, if they bring back, best scenario, Jacob deGrom, Edwin Diaz, Brandon Nimmo, maybe Chris Bassett, they're going well north past $300 million. I mean, in an ideal world, the Mets will likely spend, in my opinion, $330 to $350 million in total. That's what their payroll will be next year, which means that they'll spend, easily over $100 million this offseason. But when evaluating that just from an internal standpoint, it makes it hard to believe that this team is going to be able to really drastically change this team from an offensive standpoint and from a pitching standpoint as well. You think Carlos Rodon's going to come out of pretty petty? No, it's going to be the complete opposite. Tyler Anderson, he's due for a big payday. I would love that lefty in this rotation. But again, he's at the peak of his career now after a dominant year with the Dodgers. He's not going to replicate those numbers again, something to keep in mind. And some lesser names out there. I mean, Justin Verlander, but I mean, let's see how Verlander does in the World Series tonight. He's nothing short of a choke artist when it comes to postseason, performances. I view, to a lesser extent, Justin Verlander as the Peyton Manning of the MLB. Both Hall of Fame players in their own rights for their respective sports. Peyton was someone, though, that never felt as clutch when it came to not only playoffs, but especially Super Bowls, regardless of the fact that it's a team effort. I get that. And I see those similarities with Verlander, but for Verlander, it's far more pronounced than is Peyton. I think Peyton, it would be discrediting him quite a bit by saying this, so I don't mean to really connect them. But Justin Verlander is the opposite of clutch when it matters most. And for those reasons, and also being at around the age of 40, well, don't get me wrong, he could come out and be dominant once again next year in the hypothetical where the Mets replace Jacob deGrom with him on a short-term deal. Him and Max Scherzer back in the rotation again like they were in Detroit. There's all the reasons that that's not going to bode well throughout a normal 162 seasons with these guys and their injuries and age, rather, and ultimately the fatigue that can come and the lack of clutchness. I mean, we saw the lack of clutchness with Max Scherzer and when I was in attendance for the wild card game this year. Anything but fun. And the Mets need to bring in more certainties, guys that they feel have yet to maybe hit their peak come postseason time. And for those reasons, that's why Justin Verlander would not be close to the top of my list in evaluating the rotation, even in the scenario where you lose Jacob deGrom. I just think there's just so many ways that that can hurt you more than it can benefit you. And it may come back to bite me to say this, but I mean, Justin Verlander, he has yet to prove to me and to the baseball world that this guy can clutch up most throughout what has been an illustrious regular season career. Not much to show for it outside of that, however. And he was, in fact, a very, very sticky substance merchant during his time with the 2017 Astros when they won it all. And he was able to avoid all the cheating scandal that came with that after, more so with the trash cans and the sticky, because he was out for 2 years with dealing with Tommy John. So, going to leave that as is. I'm sure that Ben Verlander wouldn't be happy by these remarks, but it is what it is. Now, getting back to the discussion today, which is the Mets. We talked about right field becoming short porch. Not short porch, but it's going to be getting, tightened up a bit. And let's see here. I see my buddy in the chat. Again, appreciate everyone here in the live show. What's up, Grant? How you doing, brother? Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for chiming in. Grant, make sure to check him out at Jenny Mets on Twitter. Phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal Twitter account. One of the best in the biz, covering everything Mets related. Over 40,000 followers. Check him out. Does a great job. But I see here exploring trades. Yes, it's been announced that the Mets have already shown plenty of interest in a variety of different trade routes prematurely this offseason, talking with opposing clubs. Now, again, that's just testing the waters a bit. We already saw rumblings that Ohtani is pretty much off the market right now until proven otherwise. And I expect that to change as the offseason goes on. But Ohtani, like Aaron Judge, like many of these other big names out there that are external from the Mets organization, are far more pipe dream picks than they are realistic picks, knowing how much the Mets have to deal with internally right now. Shohei Ohtani is a generational talent. I would cry with tears of joy should the Mets land him, but it feels like a very likely scenario would more so be not trading for him, but acquiring him potentially in free agency after next season. So that's something to keep in mind with Ohtani, but I'm sure we will discuss him at length as the offseason goes on with all the rumblings out there. I'm sure the Mets will be linked to him officially, showing interest at some point, and from there we'll be going live streaming or doing videos right away. But from a rumor standpoint, let's get into the rumors, okay? Because what we see here is Alexis Diaz. And Alexis Diaz, for people that don't know, again, is a younger brother of Edwin Diaz. And Alexis, even though he's a little bit of a heavier set, I think he's a little bit shorter, 26 years of age, first year now with the Cincinnati Reds, posted a 1.85 ERA. One of the most dominant relievers in baseball his first year out. And the reason why I went out of my way to make sure that you guys see Edwin and his brother Alexis's highlights today, and it's Alexis, not Alexi, right? Because I feel like Alexi would be more of a French European thing. If I'm wrong, let me know in the live show in the comments down below. Again, I won't be bothered by it one bit. However, their release points are almost identical. I mean, they have so many similarities as relievers for their respective two. The big difference, however, is the velo. Edwin is that more overpowering guy, can touch 100, 101. Slider can get up there close to the mid 90s. You're pumping back a couple miles per hour on the velo for your slider and for the fastball regarding his younger brother. However, again, he's fastball and slider guy. That's his 1-2. Very similar to Edwin. And it's exciting, the thought of not only the Mets pursuing him, what they did back at close to the trade deadline at some point in the July, but this is someone that if you're going to be willing to shell out a prospect, and I'm not going to say what prospect that could or would be. I think we'll get into that later on. Oh, they're too kind, Grant, especially Hog. Hog's the cutest in here. Shout out to Hog, guys. Make sure to check him out. Best Padres YouTuber out there. And he was just reveling in my sorrow. I met up with him in game 1 at the wild card game, and that was not fun at all. But shout out to you, Hog. Hope you're doing well. But point I'm trying to make is that Alexis Diaz is under team control until 2028. So that is exactly why if you're going to acquire someone like him, it's going to cost you a decent amount of capital. And for good reason. When you have a breakout rookie year the way that you did, when you're an Edwin Diaz 2.0, to a lesser degree in the sense of really strong stuff, very similar release points, and oh yeah, you're his brother, the thought of him coming in as a potential setup man for Edwin next year in the scenario where the Mets do bring Edwin back, and I would go out on a limb and say that Edwin Diaz is the likeliest free agent to return to the Mets this offseason. That's how confident I am about it, not only from what we're seeing reporting all around, but just because I know that Edwin has a huge comfortability in New York, loves bright lights, loves Timmy Trumpet, loves everything that Steve Cohen and the Mets have done with him, with really turning him around after what was an abysmal first year with the club after being traded from Seattle in 2019, which again wasn't anything but good for Edwin's case. But he's someone I feel is almost a sure guarantee to return to the Mets on a record-breaking deal for a reliever. And in doing so, having his younger brother as a setup is so enticing. I think the only true counter that you can make is, one, you're going to be giving up a decent amount of capital for a reliever that, again, is coming off of a breakout year, but who knows what 2023 rather, and beyond is going to bring you. A lot of uncertainties there. And two, and I think that this is a very fair argument, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but if they have such similar release points and styles in Arsenal, which is exactly them, Edwin and Alexis alike, and you bring out Alexis in the 8th inning, is that going to potentially give hitters a better idea on what to expect with Edwin when they enter the 9th? Now, obviously, Edwin's X factors isn't as much about his type of Arsenal because it's simple. It's the heater, and it's the slider. It's a 1-2. That's what you're getting with Edwin every day of the week. However, it's how overwhelming his stuff is, which has made him so good along with his control. I mean, Edwin is a shell of what he was in 2019 in a good manner, right? This was a guy that had no control when he didn't have his slider. You're just sitting on fastball, and that's going deep 400 plus feet for a nice bomb to end the game and a walk-off. Or if he doesn't have the fastball, you're just sitting on the slider, something that you can control a lot in years past. So now you bring in an Edwin that has overwhelming stuff, the best reliever in baseball wholeheartedly right now, a guy that has control more than anything. K per 9 is like double. It's through the roof of the batters that he faces on average from this past season. But if you bring in his brother in that setup role, I think that is the one criticism that you could give, is that maybe, just maybe, it could come back to hurt the Mets with how similar their release points are. You're literally seeing double, just to a lesser degree in the velo between these two guys. Also, Alexis had over 4 walks per 9 this past year. The walk rate needs to get down a little bit. Reminds me a lot of Adam Ottavino, if I'm being quite honest with you, because Adam, when the Mets signed him last offseason, he had over 4 ERA. Advanced numbers weren't great. I think his expected numbers were like expected ERA around 3.75, somewhere in that ballpark. But his walk rate was through the roof. And I knew that the Mets could get Ottavino's walk rate under control. You're looking at a guy that could probably have a 2.5 to north of a 3 ERA. And he was just over a 2 ERA this year. At the best you could get for the fastball, the slider mix. I mean, that frisbee slider, there's nothing better when it comes to Adam Ottavino. He's someone that I do think is going to return the Mets. There's mutual interest for both ways. He grew up from New York, grew up a Mets fan. I think he's going to return, maybe even take a slight pay cut, even though that he's going to be deserving of more than, I believe it was the $4 million deal he signed with the Mets on a 1-year deal last offseason. But pushing that all aside, final point I would like to make on the Diaz brothers for now, if you not only bring back Edwin, but you go out and you land his younger brother that's on team control for 2028, you're looking at a potential tandem for the next 5+ years of pure dominance in the 8th and ninth inning. And it doesn't get much better than that, baby. Okay, we know that the Mets need more certainties outside of an Adam Ottavino and an Edwin Diaz. They did not have much of that last year. Now, when you look at their numbers on the forefront, you would see that this was a team that actually was one of the better bullpens in baseball from an ERA standpoint. However, it doesn't show you really what it was like to be a Mets fan, dealing with the uncertainties on how to have a lefty specialist. They tried with Chase and Shreve. That failed quick. All right, DFA him. He's out of here. Then Joely Rodriguez, who's still under team control. Another guy, basically you're only lefty in the pen that was anything but consistent for the Mets. And yes, he has good advanced numbers, but this is someone that still needs to put together. And this is someone that the Mets should not be relying on being their number one guy to get lefties out as a lefty himself next year. So Mets, their bullpen is in complete disarray. That's their biggest question mark, in my opinion. Entering next year, I expect a lot of relievers that we have liked and enjoyed over the past couple of years. Plus, I think the biggest name, a veteran, is Seth Lugo. I will be surprised if he returns. Not impossible, but that's why I discussed him in my 5 Mets who won't return video. I think there's definitely going to be a team that will overpay for him beyond what the Mets will be comfortable with doing, knowing how much they need to spend elsewhere for other players internally and externally this offseason. So Mets have a lot of turmoil on the bullpen front, and I'm excited to see how they plan to address that. But that is certainly something that they need to make sure that they can try and correct fast. But before we get further in the show, I would like to thank you all once more. We have roughly 250 people here. Thank you guys so much for that. People on replay, thank you so much as well. Let me know your key thoughts from today's first of endless live streams throughout the offseason that you'll see here on the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about the Mets potentially pairing Alexis and his older brother and Edwin together this offseason on the New York Mets? Do you like that idea? Do you not like that idea? Do you think Alexis will be too expensive for his team control, which I'm sure he will be pricey, just a matter on if you can get the Reds to budge down from what they were at their price point back in July when he was just a stud halfway through the year in his rookie campaign. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments, and continue smashing that like and subscribe on. Help us get to 200 plus likes by the end of the live show. Greatly appreciate, folks. And yeah, thank you all so much. Now let's get to a donation before I advance further here. Ed, thank you so much for the $5 holla. I appreciate that. Ed says, let's see here what Ed has to say. Seems like Epdog just ignored some of our biggest issues at the trade deadline. I hope we are a better team next year and actually improve. As do I. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and harp about the trade deadline anymore. The Mets did not do enough. Billy Epler did not do enough. We're all aware of that. I think if there's one way that you can really turn things around and fast, when again, we know the Mets need to drastically upgrade. I shouldn't even say upgrade. They just need it. They need to do a lot with this bullpen. They're gonna lose relievers, right? So there is one reliever that was just made available yesterday, officially yesterday, at the time of recording this. And it's the man that you've seen on the graphic going back and forth right here. And that is Andrew Chafin. For those that don't know, I have been asking the baseball gods, hence the Mets organization, to acquire Andrew Chafin going back to the 2021 MLB trade deadline when he was a Chicago Cub. Andrew Chafin has been one of the better southpaws in all baseball among relievers for multiple years on end now. He's a guy that actually Anthony Recker caught my co-host back during their time in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. Back then, Reck went on to say that he was anything but consistent when it came to his control, but clearly things have changed drastically for Andrew, who just put up another really good year, this time in the Detroit Tigers uniform, because of the fact that after being traded to the Oakland A's instead of the Mets, again, the Mets traded for a pitcher, hence a reliever, and Javi Baez at the trade deadline in 2021, but it was the two guys that we weren't expecting. We expected a Chris Bryant and an Andrew Chafin, and we got a Javi Baez and a Trevor Williams. Love Trev Williams. Hope he comes back to the Mets, but that's a big wild card too, because he's going to get a pretty penny, and rightfully so. But point is that Chafin went on to dominate in 2021 with the Oakland A's still. Then he signs a 2-year deal when the Mets, it just seemed like the perfect fit for him to finally come to Queens. Last offseason, signs a 2-year deal, made $5.5 million in his first year with Detroit. Obviously, the Tigers were an absolute dumpster fire. Everything that could have went wrong already. Now, Andrew Chafin, instead of taking what is a good contract of $6.5 million for this upcoming season with Detroit, he has opted to decline his player option and is electing free agency. Andrew Chafin, go out and get him. He gets lefties out. He is a lefty beauty. He gets righties out as well. What are you doing, Mets? If he is not towards the tippity top of your priority list among relievers, regardless of his price, as long as you're not looking for more than a 2-year deal with this guy, you need to go out and get him. Andrew Chafin is one of the best you're going to get out there. And yes, I fully expect the Mets to do some smaller, low-level moves. Like an Adam Ottavino move last year was lower level, and he fully exceeded expectations. He was the Mets' Aaron Loop 2.0. Who's going to be those Aaron Loop, those Adam Ottavino types this offseason where you spend low because you're spending big on your internal guys from a rotation standpoint, from an offensive standpoint led by Brandon Nimmo, from a bullpen standpoint led by Edwin Diaz. Mets are going to have to shell out so much dough to begin with just to bring certain guys back that naturally you're not going to be able to spend. They're not going to want to spend upwards of $7 million per year on a reliever. They didn't do it last year. Rightfully so. That's why they didn't bring back Aaron Loop, for instance. And that's why they also didn't get Andrew Chafin to a certain degree, because one, he was on a multi-year deal, making around $6 million on average. And two, Andrew Chafin does have ties with Michigan and Detroit, I believe, which went in hand with his decision to a certain extent. Point is that if you're going to go out and spend a decent amount of money on a 1 or 2 year deal for any reliever out there, aside from bringing back Edwin Diaz, Andrew Chafin has to be at the top of your list for more reasons than one. I'm going to be talking about him on great length. Rafael Montero, the former Met, who's killing it now with the Astros in a beautiful closer setup role, whatever they're putting him in. Montero would be a beauty, but he is going to cost a lot. I don't think the Mets are going to land Montero. I think the Mets should absolutely show interest there, but I think he's going to be someone that will be out of their price range, knowing how much it's going to cost them for just the likes that being in Edwin as is, when they know that they can bring back an Adam Ottavino for cheaper than what Montero is going to cost you, a guy that's going to certainly be looking for a multi-year deal more than likely. Montero, I would personally think, is on the outside looking in on potential landing with the Mets, but definitely a young electric arm that the Mets unfortunately didn't have themselves panning out with, and now he has excelled elsewhere. Was with Seattle, got traded in the Graveman trade last year, right? And yeah, was it with Graveman? I want to say it was between Seattle and the Astros last year, because we were all like, what happened there? But yeah, that turned out to be a great deal for the Astros. Craig Kimbrell, no thank you. There's a reason why he's cheap. And, if it happens, it happens. I'll support him. But Craig Kimbrell worries the hell out of me. I mean, that man, when he's not locating, he's a walks machine. He's past his prime now. Yes, when it comes to relievers, I always refer to them as this thing called a roller coaster. Edwin Diaz just had his best year of his career. You could rightfully argue, I don't expect Edwin Diaz to put up those same numbers next year. Similar, yes, I expect, but with a lot of relievers out there, even the most dominant in baseball, they tend to go on these trends of peak year, down year, great year, bad year, great year, bad year, good year, good year, bad year. To find consistency on a year-on-year end basis with full-fledged relievers is hard to come by. And Craig Kimbrell is in line to have a better year next year than what he had this past year. But I still don't love that idea. I think that there are still better, cheaper options out there, guys that you can develop more yourself, or maybe guys that you can turn more so into a reliever the way that you turn Trevor Williams into that. And I think there is actually a lefty out there that could be feasible for the Mets, and either back in the rotation role or a guy that can be flexed as a reliever when need be from the LA Dodgers. And no, it is not Tyler Anderson, as crazy as it is to say. It is Andrew Heaney. That's a guy that I could definitely see in a flex, David Pearson type role if you don't bring him in as a start. Because if you do bring him in as a starter, Andrew Heaney's not going past 5 innings a game, so that's something to keep in mind. A guy that we'll discuss further. Jock Pearson, Harrison's bringing up in the chat. Jock definitely would fit the bill in the sense of that DH. Lefty power bat that can definitely rake, can pull the ball, won't have to deal with the shift this year, can help you out a lot. I wouldn't be opposed to a Jock Peterson type. I think a Jock Peterson type is the most realistic option for the Mets in addressing the DH position should they do it externally. I will be surprised if they address it in a bigger role in the sense of truly a big bat. Let me put it this way. I will be surprised if the Mets land any big name bat this offseason. Big by the sense of a Aaron Judge, a Carlos Correa, a Trey Turner. Those types, I do not expect to land with the Mets. However, I'm sure the Mets will pursue, and I'll get excited and I'll get head over heels talking about them. I think a more realistic option for the Mets is, again, those guys. Jose Abreu has been discussed a lot, but again, he's a guy that's usually stubborn, that wants to stay at first base. How that bode well with Pete Alonso when he's your franchise first baseman right now. I don't see Pete moving. And also Abreu, should he again be in free agency with the Chicago White Sox not bringing him back. He's one of many. Brandon Drury is a guy I have my eye on a lot. Again, I really do. And just guys I think you're going to get for a solid price and are not going to really be drastic. And it's not going to, I think it's going to benefit you more than it's going to hurt you. And you're going to get more production than what you got this past year. Darren Ruff cannot be a New York Met again. Simple as that. Daniel Vogelback, I do think there's a solid chance the Mets will bring him back with his option on his contract. And we'll see what Vogie can bring. And I also think there's a solid option the Mets will weigh internally with a Francisco Alvarez playing time at catcher and DH, with a Mark Vientos, with a Brett Beatty. I think the Mets are going to get creative and give those kids more leashes than what they did down the stretch this year. However, I also do think that one of those three will be dealt this offseason. And I do not think it's going to be Francisco Alvarez or Brett Beatty. So what does that leave you with? You guys can fill in the blank there. Let me answer some donations before we go further in the show. There's one or two more topics I would like to get into before we wrap things up. Again, continue smashing those buttons, guys. Thank you all so much. Don't forget John Cursor. Yeah, he is a sleeper, but I don't expect John Cursor to make the bullpen next year, only because of the fact that he drastically rose this year in a short period of time all throughout the minors. I think that the Mets are going to want to get more looks at him before they give him that potential spot, but he may have a chance to compete for a bullpen spot in spring training, as do many other internal reliever options do. So it'll be interesting to see. But Yoshima, great member. Thank you so much for the dono. Yoshima says, I was a heavy advocate for uniting the Diaz brothers during the 2022 season. I love the idea. I just knew it was never going to happen because he's under team control until 2028. So it's at least reaffirming, whatever the word is, to see him connected to the Mets now, from the Mets pursuing him. But again, of course, that pursuit only went so far. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want the Diaz brothers together? I was at the Mets game against the Reds earlier this year in the summer when they handed each other the player cards, the team cards for the game with the umps. That was awesome. And unfortunately, neither of those pitchers pitched that game. Cookie Carrasco's on the bump. The Mets won. I forgot the score. But that was a good game. But Yoshima, thank you for the dono. This is a decent point as well. Considering the fact that they will likely not face the same header, that's a good point. As long as you're not going through the rotation where the guys are getting blown up constantly, right, in the lineup for, say, Alexis. Yeah, that's actually a very good point, right? Say you bring in Alexis in the 8th, and he's facing the 7, 8, 9 hitters. And then you have Edwin come in, and he's facing the 1, 2, 3 hitters. That's a good point. Very good point. Good comment, Jeff. I like that. And I do think that if Alexis came here, he wouldn't necessarily be the setup guy, because I think I feel pretty confident the Mets are going to bring Adam Ottavino back, and should that happen, he'll be in the setup role once again. Oh yeah, I just answered your question, Ed. Thank you for that dono, though. I appreciate that. What's up, Chris? Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well, Chris. Speaking of that game, again, you were with me at that game. Shout out to you again, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yep. Bingo, bingo, bingo. And that is exactly why, Jeff, this offseason, I'll be covering everything regarding this Mets team. However, I think you're going to see a lot of live shows this year where I discuss topics that maybe my first year of covering the Mets, I would have done individual videos on. But there's certain things I feel just aren't justified when you evaluate things from the rumor standpoint. I'm going to cover what I feel is not only going to do well from a performance standpoint naturally, but I think I'm also going to try to cover well what things that I know that are going to do well with resonating with the Mets fan base. It's about finding that balance. But yeah, unfortunately, we are going to see a lot of things, and you're going to find me in scenarios where I'm talking heavily about a player for a while just for it amounts to nothing, because Andy Martino will certainly be that guy to break that after a buildup of, say, a month of connections with said player, because that's just the nature of the game. Question is, who's that player going to be, or players rather? Thank you for the dono. And thank you for the membership, Jeff. I appreciate you, my man. Oh, Jeff. Yeah, I just realized who this is. What's up, brother? How are you? I've been chat to you, Jeff. You're an absolute beauty. Thank you so much for being in here. Let's see, 1,200. Bring back Sapucky. Yeah, bring back Sapucky. Indeed. Thank you so much for the dono. If you know the inside joke, then you know. If you don't know, then you know. What's the story with Conforto? He's fully healthy, and we'll see what happens with him in free agency. Nina, thank you so much for the dono. Hype in the chat to my beautiful girlfriend for the donation. I appreciate that. Let's see. What's up, Crazy Joe? How you doing, my brother? Heard some talks about trading McCann for Mats or McCann, and Dom for Kyle Hendrick. If I'm being blunt, I don't give a rat's ass where James McCann goes. I don't care what the return is, as long as he's off this roster. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, that's how little interest I have in anything James McCann related. And this is Wardy that liked the move when the Mets first did it, but quickly changed. So James McCann, wish you all the best. There's a reason why I did a shorts video from our Bleav in Queen podcast and explained just how bad of a catcher you are, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't care where James goes. If you can offload that contract, that'll not only give you more options to evaluate and address this roster this offseason, but it'll just be the biggest W imaginable. What's up, Robert? How are you? Rowdy Tellez? Nah, no. I don't know what his contract status is, but the Mets already have a Rowdy Tellez and Daniel Vogelback, so I don't see that happening. Please no Mats. I can't open that wound again. I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. I would expect big names to be Ohtani, Shane Bieber, Devers, and others. I don't think Biebs is going anywhere. Devers, I think, is going to stay in Boston. Ohtani, these guys will be in rumor mill, yes, but I don't think any of them are moving personally. But again, offseason, anything can happen. You think the Mets are going to win the division next year, says a Braves fan, and Robert? We'll see. You know what? I think there's one lesson that can be learned, Mets fans, and this my tone and voice and my thoughts will certainly change throughout the year next year when I'm covering this team. But simply put, after seeing what the Phillies are doing, after seeing what the Nationals did in 2019, after seeing what the Braves did, and what was a dog shit NL East 2021, one of the worst divisions in baseball, I've come to the conclusion that winning the division, regardless of the playoff format, really don't mean much to me. It'll change next year. My thoughts will change. You always want that bragging rights. 100% you want that bye. You saw how that bye helped the Braves, though. It didn't, if you didn't know. I want the Mets to ride high and have a more playoff competent club and mindset next year. They don't need to be the best team in the division. They do not need to be the best team in baseball. I would like them to be one of the best teams of baseball. All I ask is that the Mets be a top 5, top 6, top 7 team next year. You know, just make playoffs. And we have quickly learned that anything can happen from there, especially with this format. So as much as the idea of winning the division is awesome and dominant, and hopefully the Mets do that, I have my eyes set more so on just being a balanced club and a club that can really get over the hump of what was a lot of nervous jitters, inexperience, and quite literally just being in a downward spiral for a month plus, entering, the deepest stretch of the year, and you blow it. Avoid that, and I'll be happy. Do I think Alvarez will be Mets catcher next year? I think he will certainly be catching at some point, yes. You rather the Mets sign Jock Pearson over everyone? I disagree with that, but I respect your opinion. Do I want Judge, Wardy? Every team in the league wants Judge. Brewers are open for business, says Jeff. Burns, Adames, and possibly Woodruff open for trade inquiries. They're likely doing the poor team version of tearing it down. I just feel for Brewers fans more than anything. I mean, seriously, it's really, really unfortunate what they're going through right now. And again, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Corbin Burns, wouldn't mind that. Wouldn't mind that one bit. I think, however, that any team that would trade for Corbin Burns, the asking price would be so astronomical that I don't think the results will be worth it. Maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but I just don't know. Willie Adames, I really like. Really like. Woodruff is solid. I think I would be more enticed with the Brewers rotation if we were talking about it pre-2022 season, because 2021 they were like one of the best in baseball, and injuries really killed them this year. Renfroe and Woodruff trade package? Possible. It's possible. The Nets suspended Kyrie. Oh, shit. That just come out? I didn't see that. I did not see that. Worry, what do you think about Profar? Jerkson Profar? He would be an interesting player. He would be it would kill Padres fans if he left. He's interesting. I'll leave it at that. He's definitely an interesting piece for sure. Versatile piece as well. And definitely showed up against the Mets in playoffs. So there's that. Oh, yeah, let's talk about, you guys are mentioning, let's talk about the Turner on the list here, right? Let's talk about the Turner. I don't need to get into DeGrom much. You see, the Rangers, Orioles are interested. Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams will be interested in Jacob DeGrom. He's that big wild card. The Turner that is listed on the graphic today is not Trey Turner. It is Justin Turner. Justin Turner spoke to Mike Puma because Mike Puma had to bring up the Mets when talking to Justin Turner, because of course he did. And Justin had explained that it's incomplete, up in the air, in disarray rather, on his future with the Dodgers, on if they're going to bring him back or not. And he would be, quote unquote, open to a return with the New York Mets at the young age of 38. Now, Justin Turner did have himself another fine season for the LA Dodgers, 80 RBIs, boatload of doubles, I think 36 doubles, but that one in hand with him only hitting not even 20 home runs. So the home run rate was down, doubles were up, RBIs were still solid. A guy that, again, glove is hit and miss at this point in his age. Profile's best as DH. Definitely a guy that would be more of a fit at DH for the Mets than what they currently have. But he's just, for me personally, a Justin Turner reunion would feel like nothing short of a Wilpons type move, given his age, given his potential of regressing hard. And I just don't love that idea. I don't love it. It gives me concerns of Todd Frazier 2.0. Not as bad, but it's there a little bit. It's got that sour taste in my mouth. Justin has the playoff experience. He's done phenomenal playoffs many times. But at this juncture, I would like the Mets to really continue to build more on their core. And if you're going to acquire certain players, try to get guys that are a little bit younger, is what I would say. This was the oldest team in baseball last year. I would like that to change if possible, at least a little bit, because age certainly was a factor in a negative way for the Mets down the stretch. And that's something that's only going to get worse as these guys get older, are more injury prone. Exactly, Alan. The Mets just need consistency. You hit the nail on the head. And with that being said, guys, we are going to be wrapping up the show here in a minute. So before I do, I want to thank you all once more that chimed in for the first of many off-season type live streams you're going to see here on WardyNYM. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Yeah, he did have an insane second half. Yeah, I agree. Yep. I don't like the idea. I think that you think they work something out, and I think they work out something for sure. I don't think Trey Turner's returning either, so I think that'll further up the ante and still bringing Justin back. I think Trey Turner is going to go to the East Coast again. All I pray for is that if he goes to the NL East, that's with the Mets, because there's a great potential that a team as crazy as it is, like the Phillies, if they want to shell out the checkbook again, could be there. You know, he feels like a great fit for the Yanks, but they didn't spend big on Correa last year. Would they do it similar this year now? Would that change? Who knows? They're still stubborn, in my opinion. When is Bleav in Queens? That should be coming out Monday or Tuesday. We'll have our live show on the channel. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll be covering stay or go for the Mets. Big topic. I expect a big live stream. A lot of Mets fans in right in the start of the offseason. But guys, I think that's going to do it. We hit the nail on the head with everything that needed to be discussed. Not too many topics today, but enough that I really want to get out there and just reaffirm these things with you guys before we potentially see them in further live shows, further videos potentially. Some of these things could have been discussed in individual videos, but it just felt like a nice time to really just break down, share my raw thoughts on everything going on with the Mets and what they're connected with, potentially connected with, and going from there. So thank you guys all so much once again for chiming in. Thank you kindly for people on replay watching as well. Make sure to check out once more, that being in betonlines.ag. If you want a 50% off welcome bonus, all you got to do is use the code Bleav at BLEAV. Get your rewards. Bet online. It's where the games begin. And Mets fans, thank you so much once more. Have a great rest of your night, evening, day, whenever you're watching this. This is Wardy signing out. See you guys next week when the offseason officially begins. Let's go Mets, baby. Have a great one, folks. Peace out.